Look, we like to think we have history figured out. We draw timelines, map out civilizations, and neatly categorize the past. But then you travel to Peru. And when you stand here, right at the base of something like Sacsayhuaman, that entire neat timeline begins to crumble. Because what you see simply shouldn't exist. We're talking about 100-ton granite blocks, not just stacked, but fused together with a precision so flawless a razor blade can't slide between them. No mortar, no modern tools, just impossible engineering. How is that possible in a culture without iron or the wheel? It's not just one spot. The entire Andean landscape is dotted with these anomalies. From the mysterious massive geoglyphs etched into the high-altitude desert of Nazca that you can only truly appreciate from above, to the cloud city of Kuelap, with its 20-meter-high walls hidden deep in the northern jungle. Sites that challenge every convention we have about ancient human capability. In this documentary, we aren't just visiting ruins. We are on a journey to confront the unsolvable. We are going to explore Cahuachi, Caral, and yes, Machu Picchu, to face the hardest questions. How did they do it? And more importantly, why have we forgotten? This is 10 ancient places in Peru that shouldn't exist. If you want to understand the origins of civilization in the Americas, you don't go to the Incas. You go back further, nearly 5,000 years further. Welcome to Caral, the oldest city in the Americas, and perhaps one of the most baffling archaeological sites on the planet. Imagine a time when the Great Pyramids of Giza were being built in Egypt. Thousands of miles away, on the arid coast of north-central Peru, a society was rising in the Soup Valley that would change everything we know about human history. Caral isn't just an old village, it's a sprawling urban complex of monumental platforms, sunken circular plazas, and massive residential quarters. But here's the problem. It shouldn't exist. Why? Because according to our traditional models, civilization requires agriculture to sustain a large population, pottery to store food, and eventually a metal-based technology. Yet, the people of Caral had none of these. They had no ceramics, they had no iron or bronze tools. And yet, they built massive pyramids, one of which, the Templo Mayor, stands 18 meters high. Look at these structures. They weren't built with heavy machinery or advanced pulleys. They were built using something called shikras, woven fiber bags filled with stones. Thousands of these bags were packed into the structures, creating a revolutionary earthquake-resistant foundation. This is a level of structural engineering that defies the era. But it goes deeper. Unlike the later Inca Empire, which was built on conquest, Caral shows no evidence of war. There are no fortifications, no weapons, and no mural art depicting human sacrifice or battle. This was a society built on trade, music, and religion. Archaeologists found 32 flutes made of condor and pelican bones, and 37 cornet-like instruments. Imagine a city filled with music, trade, and communal ritual, existing in a state of relative peace for over 1,000 years. So how did they do it? How did a society without the wheel, without pottery, and without writing create such a complex social structure? Some argue that their power came from their control over the cotton trade, which was essential for fishing nets linking the coast to the Andes. But that only explains the economy, not the sudden explosive genius of their architecture. Caral leaves us with more questions than answers. It forces us to admit that we have underestimated the ancient mind. We think of history as a slow, linear climb toward progress. Caral suggests otherwise. It suggests that, thousands of years ago, there were people who had unlocked a way of living in total harmony with their environment, using engineering, sound, and trade long before the rest of the world caught up. When you stand in the center of the circular plaza, you feel a strange, heavy silence. You are standing in the birthplace of Andean civilization, and you realize that Caral is not just a ruin, it is a ghost of a path not taken, a reminder that humanity is capable of greatness that we have yet to truly measure. If you travel along the southern coast of Peru, heading toward the Paracas National Reserve, there is one site that stops every traveler in their tracks. It's etched into the sandy cliffside, facing the vast, unforgiving Pacific Ocean. It's known as the Paracas Candelabra, From a distance, it looks like a giant, glowing trident, or perhaps a candle holder, hence the name. But as you get closer, the scale becomes truly unsettling. This geoglyph is nearly 600 feet tall. To put that in perspective, that's as tall as a 50-story skyscraper, carved into a hillside that is so steep, most people wouldn't even attempt to climb it, let alone carve a masterpiece into its surface. The most baffling thing? This massive carving is etched 2 feet deep into the rock, yet it has survived for over 2,000 years. In a region where the coastal winds are relentless and sandstorms can erase tracks in minutes, the candelabra remains perfectly visible. How? Some claim it's because of the specific geological composition of the area, but many locals and researchers believe there's something more purposeful at work. For decades we've asked, who did this? And more importantly, why? Mainstream archaeology suggests it was the work of the Paracas culture, perhaps as a tribute to their deities or a landmark for sailors. But look at the shape itself. It's not just a candelabra. It looks like a staff, or perhaps a representation of the cactus of San Pedro, a hallucinogenic plant used by ancient shamans to reach altered states of consciousness. Does this carving mark a portal to another dimension, or was it a cosmic map designed to be read only from the sea? What makes this truly haunting is the orientation. The candelabra doesn't face the land, it faces the ocean, pointing directly toward the Nazca lines themselves. It acts as a beacon, a massive arrow carved into the earth, linking the coast to the mysterious desert plateau further inland. As you stand there, hearing the waves crash against the cliffs below, you start to feel the sheer audacity of the ancient mind. They didn't just build for their own time. They built for the horizon. They carved into the very skin of the earth, knowing that the ocean would carry the message to anyone or anything arriving from the water. We might never know the true purpose behind the Paracas candelabra. It remains a silent sentinel, watching the tides, holding on to a secret that has been washed over by thousands of years of human history. Was it a ritual offering, a lighthouse for ancient sailors, or something far more mysterious? Standing here in the salt-sprayed wind, you start to realize that some questions aren't meant to be answered. They are meant to be felt. If you ever find yourself flying over the high, windswept desert of southern Peru, you need to look down. Most people expect to see nothing but barren, scorched earth. But the moment the clouds part, your perspective on human history will change forever. You are staring at the Nazca lines, a massive, intricate, and absolutely mind-bending gallery etched into the surface of our planet. We're not talking about a few scratches in the sand. We are talking about hundreds of geoglyphs, geometric shapes, labyrinthine spirals, and colossal animals, some stretching over 300 meters long. There's the hummingbird, the spider, the monkey, and the mysterious astronaut figure that has fueled our imaginations for decades. But here's the enigma that haunts every archaeologist. These lines are best seen from the air. To fully appreciate the precision and the scale of this art, you have to be thousands of feet above the ground. Yet this culture existed nearly 2,000 years ago. They had no hot air balloons, no planes, and no drones. So why would an ancient people invest decades of back-breaking labor to create images that they themselves could never fully see from the ground? Mainstream theory tells us they were astronomical markers, a giant calendar to track the movement of the stars, or rituals to call for water in one of the driest places on Earth. And while that makes logical sense, it doesn't quite capture the why. Why go to such extreme lengths? The soil here is covered in dark, oxidized pebbles. By simply clearing away the top layer, they expose the lighter sand beneath, creating a high-contrast masterpiece. It sounds simple, but maintaining these lines across centuries in a desert that experiences violent windstorms is an engineering feat that defies easy explanation. Some have suggested these lines were pathways for ceremonial processions, a stage for ancient rituals where the community walked the outlines to connect with their gods. Others, looking at the sheer mathematical complexity, wonder if there was a deeper understanding of geometry or sound vibration that we have completely lost. Standing in the desert, feeling the absolute silence of the pampa, you realize this isn't just a sight. It's a message. It's a message carved into the very skin of the earth. Whether it was a communication with the heavens, a sophisticated astronomical map, or a desperate prayer for rain, the Nazca lines remain an unsolved puzzle. They are a mirror reflecting our own human need to leave a mark, to speak to something greater than ourselves, even if we don't fully understand who is listening on the other side. When we talk about the Nazca culture, our minds immediately fly to the mysterious lines etched across the desert floor. But if you really want to understand the people who created those lines, you have to look for the city they built to house their souls. Welcome to Cahuachi, a place that shouldn't exist, and a place that for centuries was completely hidden from the world. Cahuachi wasn't a typical city. You won't find crowded marketplaces, residential homes, or the typical signs of an ancient urban center. Instead, you find a ceremonial heart. Spread over nearly 400 acres, this was a massive pilgrimage site, a city of pyramids constructed from sun-dried mud bricks, rising out of the sand like a mirage. Imagine walking through this place 2,000 years ago. You'd see dozens of massive temple platforms, vast courtyards, and priests conducting complex rituals. But here is the most baffling part. The people of Cahuachi didn't just abandon it. After hundreds of years of continuous use, they did something truly extraordinary. They deliberately buried it. They covered their own temples and pyramids in thick layers of sand and clay, effectively hiding their sacred city from time itself. Why? Was it a ritual ending? A protection against a changing climate or a devastating flood? We are still trying to piece together the clues. When you stand there today, you aren't just looking at ruins, you are looking at a giant, intentional time capsule. Excavations here have revealed textiles so perfectly preserved they look brand new, exquisite pottery, and the remains of offerings that suggest this was the absolute center of the Nazca universe. It feels eerie. There is a sense of sacred silence that hangs over the mounds, as if the ground itself is keeping a secret. Cahuachi challenges our definition of a civilization. We usually judge societies by what they build to last: stone fortresses, monuments, sprawling palaces. The Nazca people built in mud and clay, and then, at the height of their influence, they decided that the best way to honor their work was to put it to rest. It reminds us that history isn't always about growth and expansion. Sometimes it's about transformation. Cahuachi was a pilgrimage site, a place where people traveled from across the Andes to perform rituals and connect with the divine. It was the bridge between the earth and the sky. As you look out across the dusty mounds of this buried city, you realize how little we truly know about the ancient mind. We think we understand progress, but the people of Cahuachi lived by a different rhythm, one that involved building for the gods, and then, with profound respect, letting the desert reclaim what was sacred. Cahuachi is not just an archaeological mystery, it's a masterclass in letting go. High above the Ucubamba Valley in northern Peru, hidden within a shroud of mist and dense emerald jungle, lies a place that feels like it belongs in a fantasy novel. This is Kuelap. If Machu Picchu is the crown jewel of the southern Andes, Kuelap is the dark, mysterious, and infinitely older king of the north. Built by the Chachapoyas, the cloud warriors, Kuelap is not just a fortress, it is an architectural miracle that defies everything we know about Andean mountain life. Perched at 3,000 meters above sea level, this massive walled city wasn't built for tourists. It was built to dominate the sky. As you approach the entrance, you're hit by the scale. The walls reach up to 20 meters high, stretching over 600 meters in length. We are talking about thousands of tons of limestone blocks perfectly fitted together, creating a bastion that has survived earthquakes, landslides, and centuries of relentless tropical rain. But here's the kicker. The Chachapoyas built this fortress nearly 1,000 years before the Inca Empire even rose to power. Walking through the entrance is like stepping back into a different timeline. The design is unique, narrow, funnel-like passages that suggest this city was built for absolute defense. If you were an invading army, you would have to pass through these corridors one by one, completely exposed to the defenders above. It's genius, and it's brutal. Inside you find hundreds of circular stone houses, many decorated with intricate friezes, geometric patterns, serpents, and zigzags that represent the culture of the people who lived among the clouds. Unlike the Incas, who were masters of expansion, the Chachapoyas were a culture of isolation. They lived in the Ceja de Selva, the eyebrow of the jungle, a place where the clouds literally touch the earth. But Kuelap is also a place of haunting tragedy. It was here that the Chachapoyas made their final, desperate stand against the invading Inca forces. When you look at the stones, you're looking at the remnants of a civilization that was eventually swallowed by the very empire that would go on to build Machu Picchu. There is an energy here that is distinct from anywhere else in Peru. It's quiet, it's cold, and it's deeply lonely. When the mist rolls in, which happens every single afternoon, the walls seem to vanish, and you feel like you are standing on an island in the sky, completely detached from the modern world. Kuelap forces us to realize that the history of Peru is far more complex than a single empire. It was a tapestry of competing cultures, brilliant engineers, and warrior nations, each claiming their own piece of the Andes. To visit Kuelap is to acknowledge the forgotten, to give voice to the cloud warriors, and to remember that even the greatest cities eventually return to the mountain's embrace. Deep in the heart of the Peruvian Andes, nestled at the confluence of two rushing rivers, lies a place that doesn't just hold history, it resonates with it. This is Chavín de Huántar. And if you think this is just another pile of ancient stones, you are mistaken. This is perhaps the most sophisticated acoustic machine ever built in the ancient world. Built around 1200 BC, long before the Incas, Chavín de Huántar was the epicenter of a religious movement that swept across Peru. But what makes this site truly terrifying and truly brilliant is what lies beneath. The temple is not just a building. It is a labyrinth of stone tunnels, subterranean chambers, and hidden galleries that stretch like veins under the earth. Imagine standing inside these tunnels 3,000 years ago. There was no light, save for what little filtered through clever ventilation shafts. The priests of Chavín were masters of engineering. They designed the water canals beneath the temple to create a constant roaring sound, like the low growl of a predator or the thunder of a god. When you walk through these tunnels today, you don't just hear sound, you feel it vibrating in your chest. They use this acoustics to induce fear and awe. Imagine the sheer psychological power, a pilgrim entering the darkness, disoriented, hearing the voice of the gods, echoing from the very walls, while inhaling the smoke of hallucinogenic plants. It wasn't just a temple, it was a theater of the mind. At the very center of this labyrinth, guarded by darkness, sits the Lanzón. It's a massive, carved stone monolith, representing a snarling, feline-like deity with fangs and serpent hair. It's an imposing figure, still standing exactly where it was placed 3 millennia ago. It's the anchor of the entire site, a silent watcher that has seen empires rise and fall while remaining perfectly still in the deep, damp silence of the underworld. What are we to make of this? Chavín de Huántar proves that the ancients weren't just thinking about survival. They were obsessed with the architecture of consciousness. They understood that by manipulating sound, light, and geometry, they could alter the human experience. When you emerge from the tunnels back into the Andean sunlight, you feel a strange sense of displacement. You realize that our modern world, with all its technology, has rarely managed to build something that affects the human nervous system quite like this ancient labyrinth. Chavín de Huántar is more than just archaeology. It is a portal into the ancient psyche. It reminds us that humanity has always sought to touch the divine. And sometimes the most profound answers aren't found in the stars above, but in the echoes beneath our feet. Have you ever looked at a cloud and seen a face? Or stared at a mountain and felt like it was watching you back? High above the clouds, at nearly 4,000 meters in the Andes, there is a place where nature and perhaps something else have blurred the lines between geology and art. This is Marcahuasi, the stone forest. It's not a city, and it's not a fortress. It is a plateau covered in massive, granitic rock formations that look like they were carved by a giant's hand. You'll find shapes that look like human faces, animals, birds, and creatures that don't belong to this world. But are they natural? Or are they the remnants of a lost, pre-Inca civilization that possessed a technology we can't even fathom? The local legends call this the altar of the gods. Some researchers, like the late Dr. Daniel Russo, believe that these stones were sculpted into a complex map of the human experience, representing different races, different ages, and different stages of life. They claim that at certain times of the year, when the sun hits these rocks at a specific angle, hidden faces appear in the shadows. It's like a cosmic puzzle designed to be solved only by those who know how to look. Now, mainstream geology will tell you that these shapes are the result of thousands of years of wind, rain, and ice erosion, what they call differential weathering. And yes, nature is a powerful sculptor. But as you walk through this maze of stone, standing in the shadow of the monument to humanity or the prophet, you have to ask, how can nature be so deliberate? How can the erosion be so precise that it mimics the human eye, the curve of a lip, or the texture of hair with such haunting accuracy? The air here is thin, cold, and incredibly still. There is a weight to the silence in Marcahuasi. It's the kind of place where you feel like you are being observed by the earth itself. It makes you realize that maybe we have been looking at history all wrong. We search for bricks, we search for mortar, we search for written records. But what if the ancients didn't build with stone? What if they simply shaped the planet to tell their story? Standing on the edge of the plateau, looking out over the endless peaks of the Andes, you are left with an uncomfortable, yet exhilarating question. Is Marcahuasi just a freak of nature, or is it a forgotten library of stone? We might never have a definitive answer. And honestly, I think that's the point. Marcahuasi exists to humble us, to remind us that there are still mysteries out there that are far older and far more mysterious than anything written in our history books. Some things aren't meant to be explained, they are meant to be experienced. High above the city of Cusco, there stands a structure that defies every rule of ancient engineering we've ever been taught. This is Sacsayhuaman, and when you stand before these walls, you don't just feel small, you feel like you've stepped into a reality that doesn't belong to our known history. Look at these stones. We are talking about massive granite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. They aren't just stacked. They are fitted together with a precision so terrifyingly perfect that you cannot slide a single sheet of paper, or even a human hair, between them. There is no mortar, no cement, no glue, just gravity, friction, and a level of geological mastery that makes our modern tools look primitive. How did they do it? The Incas, who later occupied this site, claimed the stones were shaped by lightning or carved by gods. Mainstream archaeology tells us they used stone hammers and thousands of men pulling ropes, slowly grinding these giants into shape over decades. But as you run your hand along these surfaces, you realize that theory doesn't hold weight. The joints aren't just straight lines. They are complex, multi-angled polygons. Some stones have 10 or 12 corners, locking into their neighbors, like the pieces of a three-dimensional cosmic jigsaw puzzle. And remember, these stones were quarried miles away, transported across rugged Andean terrain, across rivers and up steep mountains, before being placed with millimeter-perfect accuracy. How do you transport a 120-ton rock without the wheel? How do you carve it with such fluidity that the stone itself seems to have been softened, molded, and then hardened back into granite? It's not just a fortress, it's a statement of power. Some say it was a military stronghold, others believe it was a celestial map or a site of profound religious ceremony. But standing here amidst the megaliths, you realize the true purpose might be simpler, yet far deeper. It was built to endure. It was built to outlast empires. Even after the Spanish conquistadors dismantled much of the upper structure to build their own cathedrals in Cusco, they couldn't move these foundation stones. They were simply too heavy, too perfectly locked into the earth. Today, Sacsayhuamán remains, a defiant reminder that humanity once possessed a knowledge that has been lost to time. Whether it was a forgotten technology, a mastery of sonic resonance, or a sheer, multi-generational human will that we can no longer comprehend, one thing is certain: Sacsayhuaman is not just a ruin. It is a challenge. It challenges our arrogance, our timeline of progress, and our belief that we are the peak of civilization. When the wind whistles through these gaps, it sounds like a whisper from an ancient world, asking us, who really were the masters of this earth? If you ever travel to Peru, you'll hear a lot about Machu Picchu. But there is another site, a place where the past isn't just buried, it's alive. Welcome to Ollantaytambo. This is the only place in the Andes where the original Inca city layout, the streets, and even the water channels are still being used by people today. But behind the beauty of this living city lies a mystery that should be impossible. Look at the massive terrace walls climbing up the mountainside. They are impressive, yes, but if you walk to the very top, to the Temple of the Sun, you'll find 6 monoliths of pink granite. Each one weighs over 50 tons. They were not just quarried, they were shaped with a precision that defies common sense. And the most haunting part? These stones weren't even from this mountain. They were hauled from a quarry across the valley, moved across a raging river, and dragged up this steep vertical slope. How? Without the wheel, without iron, and without large beasts of burden? Engineers today still scratch their heads at the logistics, but it's the stonework that really makes you stop and stare. The surfaces are flat, smooth, and perfectly joined. It looks less like stone cutting and more like stone melting. Ollantaytambo was also the site of one of the few successful battles the Incas fought against the Spanish conquistadors. In 1536, the Inca Manco Capac lured the Spanish into this narrow valley and defeated them by flooding the plain, turning the ground into a swampy trap. It's a rare moment where history books actually give us a concrete victory. But even then, the Incas knew they couldn't hold out forever, and they retreated into the jungle. When you stand here, in the shadow of these massive blocks, you feel a strange sense of dissonance. You see the rough, rustic stone walls built by the later Incas, and then right next to them, you see the megalithic, impossible granite work of an earlier, more advanced culture. It's as if 2 different timelines are colliding in the same place. Some researchers suggest that Ollantaytambo was not just a fortress, but an astronomical observatory aligned perfectly with the stars. Others see it as a monumental gateway to the sacred valley. But perhaps it's simply a reminder of human tenacity. As the sun sets behind the peaks, casting long, deep shadows over the terrace walls, the site feels like a sentinel. It has watched empires rise, conquer, and fall. It has felt the tread of Inca kings and the steel boots of Spanish soldiers. And yet, it remains. It stands as a testament to the idea that civilization is not a straight line of progress. Sometimes we go backward. Sometimes we lose the knowledge of how our ancestors moved the mountains. Ollantaytambo is the bridge between the world we know and the secrets we've forgotten. We have traveled through ancient labyrinths, climbed cloud-shrouded fortresses, and stood before impossible monuments of stone. But now we reach the summit. We arrive at the place that needs no introduction, yet somehow remains completely misunderstood. Welcome to Machu Picchu. Hidden for centuries by the dense jungle and the sheer jagged peaks of the Andes, this city was never found by the Spanish. It remained a secret, a sanctuary in the clouds, until it was brought back to the global consciousness in 1911. But when you stand at the sun gate, as the morning mist begins to pull back like a curtain, you realize this isn't just a tourist destination. It is the ultimate testament to a civilization that treated the earth not as a resource to be conquered, but as a living entity to be honored. Look at the way the structures follow the natural contours of the mountain. The Inca architects didn't fight the geography, they sculpted with it. The granite temples, the precision of the Intihuatana stone, and the gravity-defying terraces. All of this was built without iron tools, without the wheel, and without beasts of burden. How does a society rise so high, so perfectly, in a place so unforgiving? There are theories, of course. Some say it was a royal estate for the Emperor Pachacuti. Others argue it was a university for the priesthood, or a sacred site aligned with the stars to track the solstice. And maybe in its own way, it was all of those things. But when you are here, you feel something else. You feel a profound silence. It's the silence of a people who understood things about our planet that we are only just beginning to rediscover. Notice the secret door, a hidden entrance that most tourists walk right past. Notice how the temple walls are earthquake-resistant, designed to dance during the frequent tremors of the Andes, settling back into place once the earth stops shaking. This is engineering that puts our modern concrete to shame. But as we conclude this journey, we have to ask, what is the real legacy of Machu Picchu? Is it just the stones? No. It's the lesson. It's the reminder that humanity has, in the past, achieved a level of harmony with nature that we have largely forgotten how to replicate. Machu Picchu is not just a relic of the past. It is a mirror. It shows us what we are capable of when we stop seeing ourselves as masters of the environment and start seeing ourselves as part of it. The clouds may cover it, the jungle may try to reclaim it, but the spirit of this city remains. It is the final, unanswered question at the end of our journey. A question that asks us to look back, look up, and wonder. What else are we capable of, if only we were willing to listen to the mountains once again? So, what does all of this really mean? We've looked at the impossibly fitted stones, the desert lines, and the fortresses in the clouds. And the truth is, these 10 places in Peru tell a story that our textbooks have largely ignored. We've been taught that civilization is a linear climb, that we are at the pinnacle and everything before us was primitive. But these ruins suggest the exact opposite. They suggest that thousands of years ago, humanity possessed a mastery of stone, of sound, and of the environment that we have spent centuries trying to replicate. We don't need to look for ancient astronauts or magic to explain these wonders. We just need to respect the fact that the ancient mind was capable of greatness we have forgotten how to achieve. Perhaps the real forbidden knowledge isn't about how they moved these stones. Maybe it's about how they lived in such perfect harmony with the earth. These places aren't just ruins. They're a mirror. They're a reminder that we are not the masters of history. We are just its current students. And if we look closely enough, maybe we can learn from them once again.